Hello there, I'm Fintusius, and yet another big PTR patch hit the servers with even more new PvP talents, changes, buffs and reworks to some existing ones, which means I'm here to give you another breakdown of things you'll be seeing in 9.1 once it finally releases. One day I hope. Before we start the video, I just wanted to make a quick shout out to my new Patreon supporters, as thanks to you, every single one of my day is now brighter. Now onto the video, and let's start with Demon Hunters. Blood Moon is a new DH PvP talent which is going to make your consume magic into a small AoE purge, which honestly doesn't really sound that powerful. However, there's also a second part to that talent. Using Spectral Sight will allow you to slip in the shadows while standing still, and while this talent is currently not testable on the PTR, the wording of it implies that Spectral Sight will behave the same way Shadow Meld does. Having access to a budget Shadow Meld to stop an incoming caster on yourself would definitely be quite a good addition to the toolkit and would surely help their survivability issues. Another notable big thing is going to be the new Demon Hunter Nightfall legendary Blazing Slaughter, and while that may look pretty meh on the surface, the real power comes from its interaction with the talent Unbound Chaos. This means that you can now create an extremely big burst window with the use of the Hunt into a buffed Fell Rush, followed by a normal Immolation Aura into another buffed Fell Rush. Maybe that's why the Hunt Conduit has been changed from buffing its single target damage to buffing the dot effect of the spell, which already hits hard, but in the end it might turn out very good in PvE and still good in PvP. Now onto Druids, and with their new legendary power still not available for testing, I'll skip that topic for now and will only mention that an old favorite from Legion, New Moon, has been buffed by about 30%, and with that talent already seeing some minor play in RPGs, maybe it's going to push it into viable territory outside of just RPG full moons. We'll have to wait and see. Next up we have Hunters, and they received a new PvP talent known as Tranquilizing Darts, which is basically an interesting new mechanic as it will be a form of budget AoE purge, as reducing the duration of magical effects by 4 seconds is going to be pretty useless in some or even most cases, but having said that, rested Druids all over the world are already getting ready to never catch a break from their hot removal. They thought they were safe after the Kleptomania mage change, but it would appear the struggle will continue in a different form. But that is not all I have for Hunters today, as the Sylvanas bow ability Wailing Arrow has been changed once again, and the reason I have not mentioned anything about it before is because it was still undergoing heavy changes, but they were mostly targeted at PvE. Having said that, in this new PTR build, Wailing Arrow is now an ability with a 2-second cast and a 1-minute cooldown, which is going to have a small 8-yard AoE hit that will silence all targets hit for 5 seconds. Since this is not available for testing, I will not talk more about it as it might get changed again, but in this current version, this implies it would not only work in PvP, contrary to previous versions, but also be a ridiculously big hunter buff if usable in PvP scenarios. I'm already having Shadowborn flashbacks. And now for a small Brewmaster novelty, which probably not a lot of you will care about because honestly, neither do I, but Rodeo's a new PvP talent spell which will allow you to clash folks even more, which you'll probably need to do if you're playing a Brewmaster in PvP in the first place. Now after the Holy Boys, as this is today's spotlight. Knight's Grace for Holy Paladins have been redesigned, and it now increases the healing of your Flash of Light by 25% and makes Holy Light reduce all damage the target takes by 15% for 5 seconds. Trust me on this one, as wording on the tooltip on screen is incorrect. In order to offset the loss of the 50% Holy Light buff through that talent, Holy Light's healing has been increased by 20% in PvP scenarios. Alright, now buckle up, as if you thought Paladins were pretty good, it's about to get better. Judgment of the Pure is a new talent available for all 3 Paladin specs, which makes casting Judgment on an enemy dispel 1 poison, disease and magical effect from yourself or allies within your aura. As you may have assumed, at least I did, is that at a first glance this is an incredibly broken talent, as making it available for Retribution Paladins will allow them to dispel different forms of crowd controls from their entire team, making them even better than they already were, which is exactly why I had to test this one out in detail, and this is what I've gathered. Don't worry, while it is still extremely strong, it is not as broken as the tooltip may have suggested. You will only dispel 1 magic, poison and disease effect in total from your team. This means that if your partner is sheeped but you have 3 magical debuffs on you, there is a 25% chance of actually dispelling that sheep when using a judgment. Even though judgment has a projectile type of effect, that dispel cannot be used the same way you can with, for example, Shadow Word Death, as the dispel effect applies instantly, meaning you cannot prejudge a freezing trap. If you only have 1 magical debuff on yourself, then by that logic you have a 100% chance to remove it. Think of removing a Frost Nova when your partners have no other magical debuffs on them. There is a new Kyrian legendary known as Radiant Embers which casts Judgment every 5 seconds, and even though quite a few Soulbite interactions are bugged with it at the moment, as of right now those judgments are treated like a normal judgment cast, which means they proc the dispel effect every 5 seconds. Those auto judgments however cannot cast if you're in any form of crowd control. They also require you to have a target selected for it to work. This means you cannot randomly dispel your own sheep while being in a sheep. Divine Toll is also considered like just one judgment cast, meaning only one dispel effect will proc. Having said that, the Ringing Clarity Conduit, which allows for multiple judgment procs, works as if you had casted 2 to 4 judgments, meaning that you can in theory dispel up to 4 debuffs, poisons and diseases in total whenever you use a Divine Toll. It also seems to be prioritizing targets with a higher amount of magical debuffs, but that requires more testing and could also be changed in a different build, so this is not confirmed information. If that were to be the case, in the real arena scenario, the chance of dispelling your healer's sheep would almost be impossible if the enemy team were to play around it. And lastly, you can also definitely create a clip of a red one-shotting himself after using Divine Toll from dispelling 3 unstable afflictions. Having covered that, let's move on to more red talent changes. Aura Reckoning auto attack damage proc has been nerfed to 100%, but you generate an additional stack if you're the victim of those critical hits. So in the end, this is actually a buff as you're gonna have more wings uptime thanks to that change. The Lawbringer debuff now deals 10% of max HP, however it no longer triggers on your main judged target. Having said that, it currently works with the new Radiant Embers legendary, which leads to a massive DPS gain on targets that are not your main focus. And that's just one Divine Toll damage over 30 seconds by the way. Ultimate Retribution will now allow you to potentially resurrect a fallen ally as long as you manage to slay its killer within 8 seconds, which might make for some fun battlegrounds moments. Luminescence has been changed from being the ultimate RPG talent to, well, something different but potentially even better, as you should be able to keep that buff rolling on allies in arenas all the time due to red being more often than not a popular kill target. Lastly, Vengeance Aura has been changed to only grant critical strike chance and stacks up to 2 times, making it realistically quite a bit worse than its previous version. There are also new legendary powers for both Necrolord and Ventir Paladins, which would potentially make this covenant more viable in PvP, but I'll cover those once we'll be close to release as they might still change again. Now let's move on to Priest and let's start with Discipline. Inner Light and Darkness is a new PvP talent which is going to work in a similar way to Warrior's defensive stance. In Light stance, healing spells will cost less mana, while in Dark stance, your spell damage and atonement healing will be increased by 10%. Honestly, sounds pretty cool, and it's sad that it isn't available for PvE content too. Blaze of Light will now increase the damage of both Smite and Penance by 15%, and additionally will make Penance decrease or increase your target's movement speed. Trinity has had its Atonement Healing bonus removed, but don't worry, as to offset that, Atonement Healing has been increased by 20% in PvP scenarios. And in order to balance all of that out, as those are some quite hefty disc buffs, Ultimate Radiance bonus has been nerfed from 250 to 150%. And now let's have a look at the Holy changes, as it looks like Blizzard wants you to go Discipline instead of Holy in the next PvP season. Cardinal Mending has been reworked and will now increase Prayer of Mending's healing by 50% and its jump range by 10 yards. While this is a very big nerf due to the removal of the ignoring healing reduction effect, it will now work great with the focused Mending conduit, making it still quite good in the end. Greater Heal's cooldown has been reduced to 12 seconds and now also ignores any healing reduction effect, which is quite a big buff and might make that talent come back from the dead after having everybody being sick of it from 8.3. Miracle Worker received a small 5% nerf to its cooldown reduction, while Divine Ascension now increases your spell range by 50%, which probably won't be very noticeable as I don't expect this talent to be used a lot. Greater Fate has been nerfed to last 3 seconds instead of 4, and this applies to Shadow Priest as well. Lastly, Flash Heal's healing has been increased by 15% in PvP scenarios, which can only mean that Blizzard is trying to reduce Holy Priest's burst healing potential through instant casts. This as a result will also make the Resonant Warrior's conduit much more powerful. And now we have a few changes for Shamans too. All Shaman specs received a new PvP talent known as Seasoned Wind. This will make interrupting spells with wind shear decrease damage taken from that spell's cool by 20% for 12 seconds. It is a pretty interesting talent, however it will not be easy to get value from it in many cases, depending on what you'd want to interrupt in a specific arena matchup. An example would be that it's going to be good to interrupt a Shadow Priest as all of his spells and damage are Shadow, while interrupting a Fire Mate's Sheep will not give you much benefit from it, as Sheep is an arcane spell school, while Fire's damage is, well, fire. Elemental received a new PvP talent known as Static Field Totem, which is going to be a reverse Ring of Peace mechanic as it will block your enemies within a static ring, making it impossible for them to pass through unless they kill the totem. Sadly, that totem only has 10% of the Shaman's max HP, so it's pretty easily killable. Resto Shamans received a new PvP talent known as Living Tide, which will reduce Healing Tide's cooldown by 1.5 minutes, but also increasing its healing down by 100% each time it pulses. This will make Healing Tide quite a strong additional healing cooldown and will surely be worth trying to kill the Tide totem as long as it was badly used, as that totem has quite a bit of HP and is usually pretty tanky. While there are some Affliction Conduit tunings which may or may not make that spec ridiculously powerful once again, this will be all that I'll cover here today as I haven't finished testing that one just yet, and honestly, it likely won't release with those current values because that's a 50k instant shadow bolt you just saw on screen. If you liked the video and would like to see me do videos similar to this one, make sure to hit the like button or even maybe subscribe, as it helps me out a lot in the creation of more upcoming World of Warcraft PvP and PvE content on the channel. You can also follow me on Twitch, where I do my PvP teaching streams and help viewers by reviewing the arena games over at twitch.tv/Venthusius. Until the next one, goodbye.